Hi folks, it's Andy. Hope you're having a great day. Welcome to today's Kendo run. I'm here in the car again on the school run, so push for time this week. So probably there's going to be quite a few videos this week where I'm filming in this situation. So I hope you can sort of hear all right. And I know it's not great quality, but I'm sure it'll do. Okay, so I've printed off a few questions and come with them to answer for you. I've got quite a few because I actually missed quite a few from the last video. So I'll try and get through them as fast as I can while still answering. Okay, so the first one says, and this is an interesting one. This one came to me by private message, but somebody actually asked me this in the dojo as well last night. One of the guys from the Kendo club I practice at. So it says, can you please comment on hitting with one hand from Chudan? From Jordan, that's the basic way to do it, but aside from Tsuki, how good is it to hit by one hand holding the shinai from Chudan no kamae to men okote? Okay, so the thing about katate waza, that's one-handed waza, we do it a lot from Jordan because that's part of the idea of Jordan, is it's so you can get that extra reach from up here with the one-handed attack. Obviously you still have the extra reach with one-handed attacks when you do it from Chudan, which is why that's why katate tsuki actually exists, so that you can do it from further away. But in terms of like attacking kote or men, generally it's just not there's nothing wrong with it. Like a lot of older sort of techniques actually sort of exist. Not a lot of techniques, but like there's examples sort of in Kendo in the past of like katate han men, for example, where you take the shinai off and you strike kind of the diagonal men. Excuse me. Often in response to kote, so you take your hand away so they miss the kote. It's a kind of nuki technique, but it's a really difficult waza to do because most people attack kote too quickly and they close the distance too quickly in sort of modern Kendo, and basically other sort of attacks against somebody else that's in Chudan, like with one hand, they just take too long to be really effective, so that's why you don't really see them that often. You do occasionally see them like against Jordan though, so if I'm in Chudan, my opponent's in Jordan, potentially a one-handed attack to get the extra reach, for example, towards the kote. It's not that uncommon, so they do exist, but they're just not quite as advantageous as they are as when you do them from Jordan. Okay, so the next two questions are actually they're kind of I'm going to group them together because I got 3 questions on the same topic. The last video I talked about how to pass shodan and what techniques you should use in shodan and how you should do the waza. And then following on from that, I got loads of comments like, okay, well, what about nidan? What about second dan? What about third dan? What about fourth dan? So I'm going to just group them together, okay? So somebody asked me about, okay, so what about second dan? Somebody asked me what about third dan? Someone asked me what about fourth dan? Okay, so sort of breaking it up. For second dan, essentially it's the same sort of thing that they're looking for shodan, just they want to see a higher level of yuko datotsu. So they want to see that you know, you're attacking with kikentai no ichi, but also the actual quality of your understanding of yuko datotsu is, you know, it has progressed since the level of shodan. Third dan, probably a similar thing as well. Sorry, going back to nidan, actually, going back to second dan, one thing I would say about that is that there's a kind of myth, I don't know if it's a myth or not, but if that's the right word, but there was a thing, I remember back when I was taking my second dan, it was like a kind of thing. It's certainly in the UK, and I don't know if it's existent in other countries. I think it comes from the word nidan for second dan, and because it's easy to confuse with nidan waza, which means they're 2-step techniques, so things like kote men, kote do, that sort of thing. There's a sort of bit of confusion where some people think, oh well, for nidan you have to do nidan waza. So you have to show the 2-step technique like kote men or kote do or something like that. But that's not a necessity. Obviously, if you can do it and you can do it well and you can show the good level of yuko datotsu while doing it, then yeah, great. But like, it's not a prerequisite to pass the nidan exam to be able to do 2、3段の技. So you know, like I say, it's just it's an evolution of what was required for shodan. In terms of 3rd dan or 3dan, again, 3dan is technically at least in Japan, is the final grade where you're assessed mainly on your technical ability. So by 3dan, you should be able to make complete and competent waza that are good quality yuko datotsu at good opportunities. So you should have the good kamae and everything. It's the same as everything else, really. It's just the kind of final step, really, of what could be considered your sort of technical basics. So yeah, for sort of between 2nd dan and 3rd dan, you really need to be making sure that, like I say, your attacks are correct and the good quality of yuko datotsu. Yeah, so remembering all the points of yuko datotsu. Yeah, so good distance, good opportunity, good striking, accurate striking, zanshin, things like this. Okay, and you shouldn't, I don't think you have to. Well, you shouldn't have to. It depends on your country and your own sort of specific criteria in your country. But, you shouldn't have to demonstrate some massive level of seme or something like this for 3rd dan, right? Remembering that, like, 3rd dan is generally for the high school students in Japan. So, that those kids aren't at a stage where they've got this massive amount, brilliant amount of seme or understanding of seme. But at the same time, you shouldn't be attacking randomly at that level. You should, like I say, be attacking or looking for good opportunities. 4th dan's where it steps up a bit, because that's where seme does start to come into it a little bit more. That means that you really do have to do away with any sort of random attacks. Your attacks should be purposeful. There should be a reason for why you're attacking what you're attacking. Or there should be kind of some sort of rationale, riai it's called in Japanese, that has to exist. And of course, you have to make the next step in the quality of your yuko datotsu. Yeah, so they have to be really good quality yuko datotsu at this stage. And another point here that's literally attached to that question about preparing for 4th dan is, can you tell me about tame? Okay, so tame is, I think it's kind of an over analyzed concept in Kendo. Tame means having the kind of readiness, particularly in your left leg and in your breath, so that you're ready to attack instantly. Having tame means being in the state or in the sort of position to be able to make an instant attack. So that's what you have to do, okay? So you have to put your energy in your left leg, make sure that when you're in kamae, you've got kind of power stored in your left leg, ready to instantly move without making an extra step, and that you're breathing properly so that you can strike. Because if you're breathing in as you need to strike, then you're not really ready, okay? So for whichever of those grades that you're going for, it doesn't really matter what grade you're going for. One thing that is important across all levels is that you don't get sucked into attacking too much. Okay, so you need to show good quality waza, you need to show good understanding of yuko datotsu for each level. But what you don't want to do is like show too much of it. Okay, so in sort of the time that you've got, sort of a maximum of like 10 attacks is probably enough. You don't want to be sort of going in there and raining down, even if they're all connecting. Yeah, you don't want to step in there and just beat down on somebody, because let's see if I can shade that off, because you don't want to just go in there and start beating down on somebody, because you're kind of showing then that you're not really understanding what's going on. All right, so it's not quantity, it's quality. Okay, right. Next question. This is a great question. This could be a bit of a controversial one. It certainly is in Japan. When I've brought up my opinion on this, some people don't really like it. But anyway, okay. So here's a question. It says, since you had briefly mentioned the All Japan Police Championships in one of your videos before, I have some questions about Kendo in Japan at professional level. Well, 8 out of 10 Senshu from the, Senshu means competitors, by the way, from the Japanese men's team were police officers in the recent World Kendo Championships. No need to mention their legendary coaches, Ishida Teramoto and Miyazaki Sensei, being police officers as well. Furthermore, just by the sheer look of the ratio, it's incredible that in the All Japan Championships, most of the competitors are police officers. I can totally understand why they fight so furiously at the All Japan Police Championships, despite its lack of beauty, since, as you said, losing results in demotion, etc. But besides the fact that their only job is to do Kendo, and they do it like 24/7, what makes police Kendo at a professional level so successful? In which way are their training routines different from another dojo that has an Hanshi 8th dan as well? Do you think that someone, brackets in Japan, whose goal is to win a bigger national as well as international titles has better chances when they're joining the police? Since last year's notable university students such as Takenouchi and Miyamoto, brackets Keisho, that's the Tokyo Metropolitan Police, have joined the police as well. What do you think about this police domination in Kendo in general? Okay, so right. So I talked about the All Japan Police Championships, right? And I do have quite a strong opinion on the Police Championships in that I actually don't like it very much. I don't like the concept of it. Now, okay, let me address your points one at a time. So, okay, so their only job is to do Kendo and they do it like 24/7. Yeah, I mean, especially the elite level sort of police guys. So for anyone who doesn't know, right, the Japanese police force, lots of them have specialist sort of Kendo sort of practicing units. Usually they're part of the riot squad, and they're kind of like the kind of special Budo division. I don't think divisions are correct, like special Budo selected players or something like that. They call it Tokuren. Is a shortened version of the full Japanese title, which escapes me. But basically, especially in bigger prefectures, Osaka, Tokyo, and some of these places, basically their entire job is to train Kendo, and they represent the prefecture at national tournaments, particularly in the well, actually the main purpose of the job is the main thing for most of them is to represent the prefecture in the police championships. So their jobs exist so that they can do well in the police championships, for the most part. It is the kind of, well, I shouldn't, that's not the official reason, of course. The official reason is so that they're training in Kendo so that they can, you know, not self-defense, but they can defend the public, and they can sort of stay in good health and what have you, because they're the riot squad after all. And the reason that the Tokuren exist is so that they can then go on to become the trainers of future officers. But I mean, it doesn't really work like that. I mean, in real terms, they tend to exist mainly so that they can participate in the police championships. So what makes the Kendo at that level so successful? I mean, it's exactly like you said. It's because it's, I mean, they'd vehemently disagree if I said professional. That, you know, when you say they're professional Kendo players, because they consider themselves professional police officers. I side with you in that I consider them professional professional Kendo players rather than I consider them police officers, which I'll get into in a minute. But they're so successful at it precisely because they're professionals at it. It is the only thing that they do, is practice Kendo, and their whole life has been generally geared towards them achieving success in Kendo tournaments, usually from them being small children. Obviously they have access to a very in-depth and frequent training regime, which other people simply don't have. So that sort of sets them above everybody else in itself. in which way are their training routines different from another dojo that has handshake done as well? Well, the first thing is a regular dojo, let's say like what they call a machi dojo, a private dojo, which is where just regular people train. The big difference between training at one of those and training as a professional police officer as part of the sort of Tokuren squad is that, okay, so the private dojo probably practices maybe for 2 hours at a time, and maybe maximum sort of 3 times, 4 times a week, maybe, if it's like a really active one. Most of them are just like sort of 2 or 3 times a week. The police training is generally at least for 5 hours a day, every day. And then the officers will also attend other practices as well. So first off, the difference is the amount of training that they do. It's like, you know, morning training for 3 hours, break, evening training 2 hours, 3 hours. Then they may have the sort of further training in the evening, or they may have the asageko, or they may also have their physical training. So the you know, a big part of it is the amount of training that they do, and then also the actual content of the training. Probably at their most private dojo, most people are kind of recreational kendo practitioners, so it isn't their job like it is with these police officers. So they perhaps don't quite train as well, it's hard, frankly. You know, they're not doing loads of kakarigeko and loads of ichikomi and stuff like that. They're doing like, you know, they might do a few rounds of kakarigeko, if it, you know, and a few rounds of kirikashi, and then it's mainly jigeko. That's how it tends to work. So that's one thing as well. And do I think that someone in Japan whose goal is to win the bigger national as well as international titles has a better chance when joining the police? Well, yeah, absolutely. If you want to become the very best you possibly can at Kendo as a Japanese person, then joining the police is by far the best chance you've got of doing that. Like you've mentioned, some of the university students like Takenouchi-san and Miyamoto-san join the police. Yeah, and what you'll tend to find is that the actual police tend to scout them, like these strong people. So it goes on a kind of long journey. It starts when they're very young kids, when they're sort of elementary school, sort of 4th, 5th, 6th years. If they're starting to show a lot of prowess, then they'll get a kind of scouted for a strong junior high school. Then they'll go on to have a really successful career. Then in that case, then they might get scouted for a high school that's particularly strong in Kendo. A lot of these are private high schools that have got very expensive educational fees. But if you're good at Kendo, then you can get there on a scholarship. That then will continue into university, and then the police authorities will then scout the top players from there, obviously offering them good employment packages. So that's how that sort of comes about. Now, just wrapping this up now as to what do I think about the police domination in general. This is where probably my opinion's a bit controversial, and it certainly is, like I say, in Japan. Now, right, let me qualify this first off, right? A lot of my family are police officers in Japan, my wife's family, and it's kind of something that they're very, very into. Only my father-in-law, though, was a member of the Tokuren. Her brothers weren't members of the Tokuren. But I do know a lot of people that are in the police, and at the dojo that I practiced at, there was a lot of police officers there. But most of them were just the regular police officers. Most of them weren't the Tokuren members. But I do have a few friends that are Tokuren members. Right. Here's the thing. I don't really like the idea of it. Right. I don't like the idea of the police championships because I don't think that as much as I defended the world championships for getting rough and tumble because of what was sort of at stake with it, I think it's a whole different concept when you're saying, okay, well, you know, here's a shiai, you're going in it, and if you don't do very well, somebody that doesn't do Kendo, has no idea about Kendo, has never experienced Kendo, is going to come and kind of, give you a hard time over it, even, affect your pay scale, or even fire you based on your performance. Obviously, that doesn't lead to a positive tournament. Yeah, so there's all sorts of messy matches that happen, much worse than what was seen at the World Championships. Now, what I don't like I don't really agree with the whole Tokuren system, frankly. Now, this is my opinion, right? And I admit that it is currently the best way of producing such elite level players. And if we did away with it, if it was to be done away with, then perhaps we wouldn't kind of produce players to that level. But here's the thing, right? I don't like the idea of professional kendoka masquerading as police officers, right? I think that they should just be private kendo teams that they could even be government funded, fine, whatever. But like the police are. But the idea that these guys are police officers, and when some of them do get upset if you say that they're professional kendoka. But these guys, the majority of them, and obviously it depends on the people, but they're in that position. They become police officers because they're good at kendo, because they've got particular talent at kendo, and a lot of them, it's all they've done their entire life since they were kids. They've kind of been groomed into becoming this kind of elite kendo player from being a small child, and they grow up with very little other sort of transferable life skills. Lots of them end up in the Tokuren. They get to around the age of 30. They're in a team of, there could be 30, 40, 50 other Tokuren members in there. And if they don't achieve the superstar status, they don't win the All Japan Championships, then they just get kicked out of the team, and the next minute they're answering the phones or they're on the beat or whatever, patrolling around in a patrol car or something like that. And they're like, well, this isn't what I want to do with my life. Yeah, and then they all quit. Not all of them, lots of them quit. They end up kind of lost in life because they haven't really got any experience or skills in anything other than kendo, and they don't really have any. I think it creates a real problem for a lot of people. Further, I personally think that I personally think that people should become police officers out of a intention or a desire to help serve and protect society, rather than because they're good at sports or because budo, because they're good at kendo. But when I say sports, I mean it. To the police as an institution, kendo is treated as a sport rather than a budo. Certainly around things like the taikai. I mean, the people there would say that no, it's budo, it's not sports, but it's treated just like a sport, and they only care about the shiai results. So yeah, I don't think that it's a good reason to become a police officer in the first place, is because you're good at kendo and can't really do much else. Okay, so flame me in the comments about that. I'm sure there's going to be loads of you doing that, because I know it's not a popular opinion, but that's what I think about it, and that's what the conclusion I came to after living there and seeing it. So that's what I think. Tell me what you think if you disagree. Right, let's move on. Right, I'm already dragging on with this. Right, okay. Right, hi, what do you think about cutting down shinai, and how is it done? Isn't shinai easier to break like that? What about cut down shinai in competition? I think you mean shaving it down, like to repair it. So like if it's sprinters, you can shave it down and stuff like that. There's loads of ways you can do it. You can use like a sharp knife, or there's tools you can get, and then you can sand it. Yeah, it's perfectly fine. It does make them easier to break, of course, because any thickness you take out of the bamboo is going to make it more fragile. And as long as you keep it within the weight limit, it's fine to use it in competition. Right, hi Andy, thanks again for these rants. Thank you. Perhaps a simpler question this time around is, what do you do, if anything, to maintain nice shinai bags and keep them looking good? Okay, so nice shinai bags, the way to maintain a shinai bag is just treat it kindly. Don't just chuck it around or bundle it around with other stuff. And if it's like one of those cloth bags that ties up at the top, the last thing what's probably best is not to put a bokken or a bokdo in it, because they tend to pierce the bottom. Just use it for shinai. Other than that, just try and keep it clean. Right, one of the more important parts for me of Kendo is honesty. During a Shiai match, I went for a Kote strike, but hit my opponent Tsuba instead, but the judges awarded me the point anyways. Is there a proper way for me to inform the judges that it was not Yuko Dototsu, or do I have to accept and live with it? I do not want to get the win in this way. Okay, so that's an unfortunate situation. Sometimes it happens, you attack, it actually misses, but the judges think it's a point and they award it. You feel bad about it. Afterwards, you've won, but you don't feel like you've won. It's not a very nice feeling. It happens to us all, and it will happen for your opponent as well. It's kind of a swings and roundabouts thing. There isn't a process where you can challenge the Shimpan in any sort of capacity. So whether you basically, you don't have the right to challenge the Shimpan as to whether you agree or disagree with their decision. So even if you think they made the wrong call in that they awarded you a point you shouldn't have, you don't have the kind of ability to challenge that. You have to just accept it. All right. So essentially, decisions that you don't like, even if they mean that, even if it's one you don't like because you're winning, or you feel you're winning unfairly, you can't do anything about it. You just have to accept it. It'll go, what goes around comes around, basically. You know, you just have to next time try and do the better kote so that situation doesn't happen. Thanks for the videos. I've been following since the old channel. Keep up the great work, thank you. A quick question, Andy. Whatever happened to Kendo Gamer? I was saying, Kendo Gamer was another channel that I used to do where I used to play video games live on stream, and I used to sort of answer questions whilst I was doing it. I'd love to do it again. I don't have a lot of time for it right now. As I said before, my wife is still sort of stuck in Japan, waiting on a visa approval to come back to the UK. So as well as kind of running KendoStar, which is kind of it's kind of really grown really quickly, especially since we sort of set up here in the UK, and sort of really became properly international. That takes up a hell of a lot of my time, of course, but I'm also at the same time looking after our kids, so I'm kind of a semi-single dad at the same time for the temporary sort of future, but maybe when she's back and I've got a little bit more time to do something like that, maybe I'll get into it again if people still want to hear it. Last couple ones, then I'm gonna have to go and get them. Can you talk about Hikido and Hikigyakudo? Despite spending so much time in Super Zeri during Keiko, it feels uncomfortable compared to Toma / Isokuito no Ma Do. Do feels different to men and kote, whereas men and kote have an obvious opening which can be hit just using speed. It feels like for do, the only way for me is to hit is to feint men and then hit do. Sometimes I also feel like going for do straight from Tsubuzeri without extra movements isn't awarded ippon, whereas men and kote are. For reference, I'm second dan. Okay, so right. All waza from Tsubuzeri have to be done at the good opportunity. In fact, that's not just from Tsubuzeri, it's from the Chudan as well. So if you attack kote from Chudan and you hit the kote even though you haven't broken their kamae, like if you kind of sort of weasel around their kamae to hit the kote, even if you hit the kote, that shouldn't be ippon. And the same goes for Hiki waza. So even if you hit the Hiki men just out of no opportunity, it's very hard to hit Hiki men when there isn't an opportunity there though, because the sort of opponent kind of losing the ability to move and defend themselves counts as an opportunity, like hitting Hiki men or Hikikote, for example. Then it shouldn't be considered ippon. So if you want to hit Hikido or Hikigyakudo, then you have to create an opportunity. Now you do that by, now I don't want to use your word feint. It's not about feinting to the men. It's about applying seme towards the opponent's men or kote. So he feels like he's going to receive a men strike, which will cause his hands to raise up. And that's the point when you want to hit that Hikido or potentially the Hikigyakudo. I'd be going for the regular do more often, because I think actually hitting the good solid gyakudo and then going backwards is actually quite difficult. It's not impossible though, some people are very good at it. But what I'm getting at is I think you need to kind of just go back to looking at creating the opportunity, whether it's a men, kote or do, and how those sort of work together, how those have a relationship to each other. And once you kind of get a better understanding of that, then I think you'll start to feel more comfortable with your do strikes as well, if that makes sense. I know, I'm sorry, it's not like an easy answer like, oh, just do this. It doesn't work like that for Hikido, unfortunately. Right, final one. I have a real beginner's question. This one's from the early access group, by the way. So if you're not in that group, there's a link in the description. Make sure you click it and join it. It's free, of course, to join, and it's a great place where there's loads of people talking about Kendo. There's loads of questions firing around, and of course, it's where I post the videos, the new instructional episodes of the Kendo show. They go in there before they go anywhere else. Okay. Right, I have a real beginner's question. During Suburi, I can relax and perform cuts, but when it's anything in front of someone, I seem to tense up and I'm unable to relax. Any thoughts on how to relax when in front of someone? Okay, so this is normal. This is probably something that everybody experiences. I know I certainly do, and I still do, depending on the situation. Essentially, it all comes down to, it's not a physical thing, it's a mental thing. You need to kind of, one, it's experience. It'll get better with experience, definitely. But you need to try and breathe deeply, all right? So try not to, even when you're in front of somebody, try not to let it accelerate your breathing. Try and stay as calm as you can. And with that, your body should start to relax. Like I say, breathe nice and deeply. And, you know, try and keep your sort of mind sort of on the ground, really, without kind of getting too excited or too pent up. All right. There's no, it's a bit like the other question, really. There's no kind of secret answer to it. There's no secret pill, really, that can just fix it like that. So, yeah, it's experience. And other than that, it's going to be effort to keep yourself calm. All right, that'll do for today. There are quite a few questions I got through there, a little bit longer than yesterday's video, but still, I hope it was useful. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you give me some more questions. There's a comment section and all that, or you can post them in the early access group. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about next time. Don't forget to do all the whole like, share, subscribe, all that stuff that I always talk about, and and shop at KendoStar, because if you like these videos, it's KendoStar that pays for them and keeps them coming. So that's KendoStar.com for all your equipment and stuff. It's the best equipment in the world anyway. It's dead good. It's good prices. It's free shipping everywhere, and it's all the stuff that I'm in charge of doing. So get over to KendoStar.com. All right. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you again next time.